6. A Journey in the Dark. The odour of damp straw soaked in urine and concealing packed layers of faeces alerted the doctor that they were approaching the stabling and the lower levels of Dinorban.
"They never mention this on the Horse of the Year show,"
Ace complained. The stables house 300 and are sorely undermanned. All the detritus and stench from above tends to drift down here, and few are willing to volunteer for a tour of duty amongst the beasts, Reese told them. He had arrived in the doctor's room an hour after Ace had been brought there, bearing 2 packs of supplies. Ace had emptied one of them on the floor and had sorted out the articles that she thought would be useful. The rough mat, the blanket, the Tirnanog clothing, the blunt knife, the tin pot, and the tinder box had been discarded, as she had their equivalent in her own rucksack. The doctor had hefted his own pack and then dropped it, allowing Ace to take the food from it. He had taken the map out of Reese's hands and stashed it away inside his jacket pocket. "You have a journey of several days ahead of you," Reese warned them, picking the pack up from the floor. The doctor smiled and patted Reese on the back. "Don't worry about us. We always travel light." The stables were long and dimly lit, filled with the whinnying of horses and the sound of hooves on stone. A blacksmith worked in a soot-filled room just inside the entrance. A passing stableman, pushing a wooden barrow abrim with soggy straw and droppings, gave Reese a cursory salute. "One of the guard," Reese told them once he had passed. "He let one of the Fairbolg get over the wall a few nights ago. He's down here as a punishment." He paused and looked about himself. "I think 2 bays have been prepared for you. This way." They went along a narrow corridor between parallel rows of stalls from which the curious heads of horses peered, occasionally neighing at their visitors. He halted in front of a half-door with a white triangle marked on it in chalk. "These are the ones. They've got all the tack ready. You can both ride." Ace nodded. "To an extent, yes," the doctor expanded. "You'd better put these packs on the horse. You won't be able to ride properly with that bag weighing on your back. We can balance that and this pack across the horse's back." He went into the stall and slung the burden over behind the rough saddle. Then he led the first of the horses into the narrow passage. He handed the reins to Ace. "If you carry on down here, you'll eventually get to a wider space. Wait there for us." Ace set off until she came to an intersection of corridors which appeared to be the place that Reese had indicated. She rubbed the horse's nose and let it lick her arm. It had a star of white on its head, and a long stripe extended along the length of its nose. It was mainly a dark brown colour, apart from the ends of its legs, its tail, and the tips of its ears. Its eyes seemed bright with intelligence. The doctor came out of the passageway with a similarly coloured horse. Reese followed close behind. "Right, Doctor, Ace. It's nearly noon. I'm going to take you to a concealed entrance at the foot of the wall. Once you're outside, there is no turning back. You may not re-enter Dinorban. You must make all haste through the Formois encampment. They will be powerless to stop you."
Yeah,
said Ace.
"We've been through all this before. If you're going to turn us out, then why don't you just get on with it?"
"Very well. Follow me." The journey to the door was short and uneventful. A guard stood by the featureless slab of stone that was their gateway to the outside world. He didn't salute Reese, but he looked suspiciously at the doctor and Ace. "Are these the 2? "Of course they are, fool. Open the door." The guard reached into a crack in the wall, and the door swung open, gliding easily over polished, frictionless surfaces. "Quick, go through now. There isn't a moment to waste." Reese ushered them and their horses through the opened portal. When they were outside, he gave them a quick farewell. "Dagda rides with you," and ordered the exit sealed. The doctor and Ace stood alone again in the twilight world of Tirnanog. Not 100 yards away lay the Formois camp, filled with an ominous silence. The wall of Dinorban stretched high above them, cutting off their only link with the passage home and safety. "We'd better go, Ace," the doctor said, helping her up onto the back of her horse. He leapt nimbly onto his own steed and encouraged it into a slow walk. Ace followed suit, drawing alongside him, and they approached the first of the Formois tents. Ace gave a gasp of surprise. A figure sat in front of the tent, half hidden by the voluminous flaps of canvas. In the dim light, the creature's skin seemed grey as the stones of Dinorban and utterly hairless. The head was wide and squat, almost Neanderthal in its appearance. Eyes burned like coals beneath a protruding forehead.
"Why doesn't it do anything?"
Ace asked. "You heard, Captain Reese," the doctor answered. "They're inactive when the sun is at its height. Maybe it's a circadian rhythm built into their metabolism to conserve energy."
"But surely that wouldn't stop it attacking us. I mean, we can be woken from sleep, and that's a bit like a
circadian rhythm? Well, luckily for us, it can't do anything about us." They continued through the camp. Many eyes were on them, but nothing was done to halt their progress. At one point, Ace thought she saw an arm twitch towards its weapon, but whether or not it was just a trick of her mind, nothing came of it. She felt uncomfortable with all those eyes following her slowly. She could almost feel them probing into her, and said so to the doctor. "Maybe they have some latent telepathic ability," he suggested. "Who can tell? We're dealing with an unknown species here, so it's too early to say." Ace shivered at the sensation and glanced around uneasily. The feeling was becoming oppressive when, at last, they reached the other edge of the camp. "Time for a gallop," the doctor said. "We should get away from here now." "Halt, men, people!" a commanding voice rang out. From out of the gloom rode a troop of soldiers. Ace looked again, and her eyes widened.
"Professor, they're centaurs!" she exclaimed.
"Firbolg, I believe the local name is," the doctor reminded her. "Men, people!" The leader saluted them with a double stamp of his forefeet. He was tall and well-muscled. The long hair hanging from his head matched the colour of his coat. "Men, people," he repeated, "you are foolish to ride out here. The Firbolg have been sorely insulted by your attitude towards us and your refusal to treaty. Under the circumstances, there is no reason why we should not cut you down where you stand." He pulled an arrow from a quiver slung over his back and put it in his bow. The doctor bowed deeply in his saddle before the centaur. "Good master!" The Firbolg straightened his back and stood proudly. Ace could only admire his handsome physique, so perfectly formed. His eyes, reflecting the dim light of the sun, were red pools of blood, and Ace thought that this warrior must surely be well versed in the spilling of life's fluid. "I am Shorad of Tyron," he declared. "Good Master Shorad, you are quite correct in your summing up of the situation. But we, two humble travellers, have no bonds with the men of Dinorban. We came from the world beyond the stone circle, and have been cast into Tir Na Nog to fend for ourselves." "You are from the place that the men people call Earth?"
"I'm from Perivale,"
Ace told him belligerently, as though challenging him to find fault with her place of birth. She shook her head, tossing her long brown hair over her shoulder. "A village in Earth," the doctor said obsequiously. Ace wondered why the doctor was being so sickeningly polite to the centaur. "And I am from another world, far from both Tir Na Nog and Earth. We want no part in your quarrel with the humans of Dinorban, and ask only that you allow us to go on our way, so that we may seek an audience with the one called Goivni." "You seek to visit Goivni?" Shorad asked with some surprise. His tail struck out at an imaginary fly. "It is a matter of some urgency." The doctor nervously fingered his paisley tie. "Although Goivni has shown himself to be a cruel man, we have been instructed that our only hope of salvation rests with him. We do not hold much hope." "Very well. The Firbolg are creatures of honour, unlike you men. We have no quarrel with you, only with the men who cower within the fortress of Dinorban. We shall let you pass." "Thank you again, Master Shorad," the doctor said, and bowed again. "Come along, Ace. But do not attempt to re-enter Dinorban. We have strict instructions to kill all those who attempt such folly, no matter what honour commands."
"We wouldn't dream of it,"
said Ace. She gave her horse a quick nudge to get it moving after the doctor.
When she was level with him, she asked, "What was all that grovelling about, Professor?" He turned in his saddle and smiled at her, with his eyes as much as with the upturned corners of his mouth. "When you've read the entirety of Greek literature, and written some of it for that matter, you pick up a few facts, like, for example, what a notoriously proud race the centaurs were." "But how could you know that these centaurs would be like that?" "Just a guess. After all, being nice couldn't have done us any harm, could it?" They rode away from Dinorban, making good progress. The effort of riding precluded most attempts at talking, and left Ace's mind to wander freely. Tir Na Nog slipped by around her, shrouded in the gloom of permanent twilight. But despite the conditions in which she saw it now, some lingering memory of times past seemed to have remained, captured by the very ground over which they rode. Images projected themselves onto the screen of Ace's consciousness. A tree, whose leaves were concealed in a spreading blackness, told tales of wild dances by small red figures, their cavortings matched to the sound of weird music. A rocky outcrop stirred feelings of oneness with the surrounding countryside, provoking a rush of sensations from the grass. The small mammals, the uniformly spread clover, and something else which reared up on its hind legs and touched its horn to the sky. Ace began to know what it could be like to live hand in hand with nature, rather than in the continual state of conflict which the men of Earth willingly endured. She found herself loving the land of Tir Na Nog, despite seeing it at its worst. It, she thought questioningly. Was that what she had meant? The land had a distinctly maternal feel to it. Protective, she would embrace those who had need now, but she herself has need. She was being deserted by her children. Ace started guiltily at the thought of motherhood. Was that what mothering was all about? Would Ace's own mother feel the same way? Had Ace treated her mother in exactly the way that the men of Dinorban were treating their own land mother? Uncomfortably, she closed off that line of thought and turned her mind away from the land. Overhead, Aron's wheel grew shrouded in cloud and shone more and more dimly as it approached the western horizon. Finally, its upper circumference gave a single last glimmer of light before vanishing completely. Dinorban was now far behind, and they had passed through what the map indicated was the first outflung edges of the great forest through which they had to travel. "It's about time we looked for somewhere to spend the night," the doctor told Ace, as they rode out of a small wood, "and this looks like it might be just the place." Ahead of them was a small group of buildings, a farm by the look of the fields around it, sectioned off into different crops. Something seemed to have been let loose in several of the fields, for they were trampled by heavy feet. They rode up along the track that led into the yard around which the buildings clustered. The doctor dismounted and tied the horses to a post which seemed to have been erected for that purpose. "Hello!" he shouted. "Anyone home?" There was no answer. He went to the door of the house and rapped on it with his knuckles. It swung open, before falling off its hinges completely. "My God!" whispered Ace. The interior of the house was blackened and burnt, and it reeked of a charnel house smell. "Go and wait by the horses, Ace," the doctor told her. "But do it," he ordered. She retreated as he went further inside. A couple of minutes later he emerged, his face dark with fury. "I don't think we should stay here." He got up onto his horse and tugged the reins free of the post. Ace mounted up as well. The doctor wheeled his horse round towards the track. "Please don't leave me here." They turned to look at the source of this piteous voice. In the wide entrance of the barn stood a young girl. She was leaning against one wall as though she could hardly stand. "Don't go." When they had found a place to sleep away from the farm, the doctor sorted out portions of the beef jerky that they had been given as food, and they listened to the girl's story while they ate. "My name is Bathsheba," she told them. "A few days ago my father sent me into the woods to gather kindling for the fire. With Dagda's wheel gone, the world has grown colder, and we need all the heat we can produce. He said it was the only job I can do. My arm, you see, and my leg is not much better. The doctor and Ace had indeed seen how poorly developed the muscles in the limbs of her right side were. She had stumbled across the yard and been unable to lift herself onto the doctor's horse. "I went out into the wood and did my best, despite my weakness, but it takes such a long time. I lay down to rest between the roots of a tree and fell asleep. When I awoke, Aron's wheel was low in the west, and I realised that I had slept through a whole night. I was stiff and cold, and it took me a long time to walk back to the farm. I knew that they would not be worried, because they would hardly notice I was not there. But when I got back, they were dead. All of them." She started to sob. The doctor went over and held her in his arms. There, Bathsheba. It's all over now. There's nothing more you can do about it, Bats." This seemed to still her tears. She looked up at him with soulful eyes. "It's all my fault," she said, "because I'm wicked and ugly." "What do you mean?" Ace asked. "You're not wicked or ugly." "What do you call this?" Bathsheba asked, indicating her withered arm. "I might as well have been born a witch. The demons smelled me and came to kill my family so that they could take me away." "But they didn't, did they?" Ace pointed out. "That proves it wasn't your fault." Bathsheba shrugged silently, but wouldn't say any more about it. She seemed to be trying to block it from her mind. But slowly she told them more about herself, and when she discovered that the doctor and Ace were from the world described in her book, she came close to being delighted and asked them question after question. With some encouragement, she produced the book from her pocket. It was the only thing she had rescued from her home. "Ah, the Bible." The doctor took it from her and opened the cover to look at the inscription there. "A late 18th century copy, I see." "You've read it?" Bathsheba seemed surprised. "Oh, yes. I even helped with one of the lines." "How did it go?" "I think it started, 'In the beginning,' something like that anyway. It may not have been the Bible. There are a lot of things that start with 'in the beginning.' The Book of Rassilon, for one." "Stop babbling, Professor," Ace told him. "Sorry." He returned the book to Bathsheba. "I think it's time we settled down for the night, don't you?" Ace took a sleeping bag from her rucksack, and the spare pack yielded a blanket and mat for Bathsheba to use. The doctor sat down, his back against the tree they were using for shelter. Bathsheba was soon asleep, but Ace stayed awake for a time and whispered quietly to the doctor. "Why are the Firbolg and Formois trying to get into Dinorban, Professor?" "They're afraid, Ace. Understandably, perhaps. After all, the sun has vanished and demons roam the land. Sounds like it might be the end of the world to me. And the humans are afraid that if they let the others through, then the men of Earth will discover the stone circle and prevent the outflow of refugees. Nobody wants to know people who haven't got a home." "It seems so callous, though. I mean, I can sort of see their point of view, but leaving all these others to die—" She tailed off and gave a sad sigh. "Look, Ace." "What?" She sat up in her sleeping bag and looked to where the doctor was pointing. Although the sunlight had faded some hours ago, there was an orange glow along the horizon to the north. It highlighted the black outline of the forest in the distance, and the tops of the low hills around the travellers reflected the light dimly. "What is it?" she asked. "Who knows?" The doctor raised an eyebrow. "But we're heading that way, so I should think we'll find out. Now, go to sleep, Ace." "Good night, Professor." "Good night, Ace." "Good night, John Boy." "Shh, Ace. Go to sleep." Thermal identified at 1-1, O100, alter heading to accommodate. Rise 1000, awaiting instructions. Scan. Target identified at 3743560, motion vector 37, alter heading to accommodate. Descending 3460, awaiting instructions. Ignite primary burner. Eructate. Descend 100. Extend number 3411, number 3412. Consume target. Awaiting instructions. The new day dawned as dull and oppressively as the day before, and it was only the doctor shaking her that woke Ace. There was certainly not enough light from the sun. Bathsheba was left to sleep until they were ready to leave. She sat in front of the doctor, supported by his arms on either side. The additional passenger made it difficult for them to proceed any quicker than a fast trot, but before an hour had passed, they were within sight of the forest of Coed. The map indicated that there was a thoroughfare which offered a safe passage through the mighty woodland. They rode up close to the edge of the trees, and then they followed the borders in the hope that they would intersect the road. As noon approached, the doctor reined in his horse and called Ace to a halt. He pointed into the trees. "Look, a light." Between the trunks, a bright white light was shining. It had a soft quality, like moonlight in a lover's eyes, and it ebbed and flowed as they watched. "Do you think we should go and see who it is?" Ace asked. "They might be able to point us in the direction of the road." "I'm a little wary," the doctor said, "because in a land which has yielded up centaurs, I can quite conceive of a will-o'-the-wisp existing. But have you ever heard of such a thing? A light which lures travellers to their doom." Bathsheba looked frightened at the idea, but admitted that she had never been warned about anything like that. "Well then, shall we see?" They dismounted and led their horses amongst the trees. The light grew no brighter, but nor did it recede, enticing them into the depths of the forest. A strange whispering noise drifted towards them at first, and just as they were nearing its source, a mighty voice called out, "Done it! Amazing! Quite amazing! Come, Doctor, come and see what I've done." The doctor turned to Ace in surprise, but then shrugged his shoulders and went on, emerging into a clearing filled with light. At the centre of the clearing sat a figure, human in shape, but sitting he was taller than the doctor, and an aureole, a nimbus of moonlight, surrounded him. "If I can just orientate myself to you properly," the figure said. Ace wondered what he could mean. After all, he was facing the doctor head-on. "It is Han," Bathsheba whispered with awe in her voice. Suddenly, the figure reached down, and from between his hands a shoot leapt from the ground, became a sapling, and then shot up until, clenched between his hands, he held a young oak tree. He stood up and ran his fingers over the wrinkled bark and stepped back, a look of puzzlement on his face. He smiled at the doctor. "I think I may talk now," he said. Sit and eat." "Yes, we have been riding since morning," the doctor agreed. "Maybe we should eat." They sat facing the strange being. Ace took some food from her pack and passed it round. "I am Han," the creature said. "It is Han," Bathsheba said again. "I've heard of him. Never thought that I should see him. If only Shan could be here. I think that I must offer you an apology, Doctor, for not only am I to leave you soon, but the next time I see you, I fear I shall perform you a great ill. I have thought much on what I shall do, and now realise that what you did was necessary, and perhaps beyond your power to control." "Han?" Bathsheba asked. "My body is poor and weak, and it is said that you, like Gwivni, are able to heal, that you protect the weak. I must go now. Goodbye." He screwed up his face, and with some apparent effort walked out of the clearing. The effulgence faded as he went. "What a strange chap," the doctor mused. "You are heading the right way to reach your path," a distant voice carried through the trees to them. "Weird!" Ace dismissed him. She tried not to be impressed by his trick with the tree. Bathsheba was disconsolate. "Han could do nothing for me. I'm cursed. I know it." "Don't worry about it, Bathsheba," Ace said. "There's nothing so awful about having a bad arm." They left the clearing and remounted their horses. Then they continued in the direction they had been heading, at least with the knowledge that they were on the right path. Ace wasn't sure that they were going the right way, however, for the prospect of going to meet a maniac who unleashed demons upon a world did not appeal to her. The doctor, on the other hand, seemed to think that it was vital that the meeting should occur. Perhaps he was right, but could they really persuade Gwivni to turn to the good once more? At last they came to the road through the forest. The entrance was guarded by 2 stone sentinels carved into the shape of warriors holding swords prepared for battle. With some disgust, Ace noticed that from the belt of one of the warriors hung a brace of human heads. The doctor explained to her that it was an ancient belief amongst the Celts that the head was the seat of the soul, and so warriors collected the heads of their enemies as trophies, and to take on the strength of the dead men. Leaving the grisly sculpture behind, they set off into the forest along a road which became more and more overgrown the further in they went. The sounds of the forest became less and less the deeper they penetrated. Near the edge there was much birdsong, but as they left behind the plain the forest grew quieter until Ace commented to the doctor, "It's as though we were the only living things here, Professor." "Trees are living things, Ace, and if you listen carefully, you can hear them going about their business. Photosynthesis, transpiration, evaporation, all have their own very distinctive sounds." "You're making that up. You can't hear anything." The doctor gave her a hurt look and huffily straightened the lapels of his brown jacket. But then he relented and smiled to her. "You're quite right. Just trying to enliven the conversation." Suddenly Bathsheba spoke up. "There is something out there." "What do you mean?" Ace asked. "Something out among the trees. It's been following us for the last hour." The doctor looked over Bathsheba's shoulder. "Are you sure about this, Bats?" "Oh, yes. I heard it earlier. Oh!" Suddenly the path was filled with swarming figures. They wore simple loincloths, and their bodies were covered with red fur. Bushy tails bristled and swirled about their legs, the white flashes at the tips dancing wildly. The doctor's horse reared up, but tiny hands brought it under control. One of the figures emerged from the crowd and waved a spear at the 3 travellers. Its dog face formed words and spoke gutturally. "You will come with us. You are our prisoners." They were led off the road and into the welcoming arms of the forest which closed about them completely. The Shay camp lay a few hundred yards away from the road. There was nothing elegant or sophisticated about this place, stark in its simplicity. It was a cluster of low tents surrounding a central fire over which a pot boiled. A deer was hung on a spit, its tissues bubbling and oozing fat. The small group of Shay that had captured them took them into the centre of the camp and pushed them to the ground in front of their leader, who rested on the broken stump of a once sturdy oak. As he ran his eyes over the captives, he sucked at a pipe and let sweet-smelling smoke trickle out of the corners of his mouth. After a long silence, he clenched his sharp teeth around the stem of the pipe and growled, "Humankind, I am Idvig. Why are you trespassing upon our land when the Shay and the men of Dinorban are sworn enemies? What purpose have you in coming here?" "What's it to you, scumbag?" Ace shouted, her side roaring with pain where a carelessly directed spear had crashed against her ribs. "Quiet, Ace," the doctor suggested mildly. "We have come—" "I do not wish to hear excuses from a humankind," Idvig said. "Then why do you ask?" snarled Ace. Idvig rose and stepped down from his makeshift seat. His eyes narrowed as he approached Ace. "We've been hearing strange things ever since the bright globe departed from the sky. Voices tell us that our master has turned against you humans, and he seeks to give the world back to those to whom it belongs." "And whom does it belong to?" the doctor asked. "Why, us," Idvig replied. "Long millennia ago, Guevni created a world for the Shay, but the paradise was soon despoiled by the arrival of others. And then you humans came. There are those of the Shay who have befriended you, but now Guevni will drive you out like the vermin that you are. We shall hunt you down and purge the land of your foulness." He spat on the doctor's feet and turned away. "Why do you harbour such hate?" the doctor asked. Idvig rounded on him. "Because we were the first, and now we are the lowliest. Now you know how it is to feel that your god has deserted you. I sent a warrior to Guevni to ask how we should deal with you, humankind. He gave us an answer which was no answer, but now he has taken the globe, and he has unleashed his demons to drive you out. He looked at his humblest children,
and saw that they were in need, and he came to their aid.
Ace looked away from Idvig and examined the crowd of Shay around her. At the back of the crowd, peeping out from behind adults, children gazed with wide, fearful eyes at the humans. The older Shay, clutching their weapons tightly, looked at their captives with open contempt. It was human society in miniature, the adults seething with prejudice, and the children free of such feelings, but being prepared for them every day. Idvig motioned to some of his people.
"Tie them up in the prisoner's tent," he commanded. "They will be dealt with as we deal with all such, as our creator Goivni commanded."
He dismissed them with a cursory wave. The doctor, Ace, and Bathsheba were bundled unceremoniously away from their audience with the leader and pushed into a small tent which had been erected around the base of an oak. Then, backs to the tree, they were bound and left there. "Is your side all right, Ace?" the doctor asked. She smiled at him. "It's just bruised, really. Feels worse than it is. It only just broke the skin." "And are you all right, Bats?" "I think so." "Professor," Ace asked, "was it just my imagination, or were they, well, foxes?" Ace had noticed how dog-like the faces of the Shay were, how their bodies were covered with red fur and a thick brush of a tail. "Well, obviously they aren't really foxes," the doctor said. "Obviously? But they do appear to have some fox in their lineage. Strange that. I wonder how it happened. I mean, they have opposable digits, better developed cerebral cortex than your average fox. But on the whole, they did appear to be foxes." "What will the Shay do to us? Will they kill us? What would Goivni have them do?" Bathsheba asked, her voice tremulous. The doctor twisted in his bonds to look at the Bathsheba. "He's turned against your people, Bats." "Driffid told us how he made the demons kill an army," Ace added. "Honestly, Professor, I don't know why you're so keen to see him." There was a slight hesitation from the doctor. "Tackle evil at its core," he said. "Goivni has caused all this trouble. Maybe I can make him repair the damage." "But now you never will," Bathsheba moaned. "The Shay are going to kill us. They won't eat us, will they?" For some reason, the idea that these creatures would actually eat them was more repugnant to Ace than the thought that she might be killed by them. "I mean, foxes are carnivores, right?" "Well, strictly speaking, they're omnivores, though I should say that they prefer meat. But you're confusing the Shay with foxes, Ace. There's no reason why the Shay should eat the flesh of another intelligent species." "No, I suppose not." "We must escape," Bathsheba said. "I've been trying to get loose," said Ace, "but these ropes are too tight." The doctor agreed. Yes, Erich Weiss never tied knots like these. Voices approached the tent, and its flap was thrown open.
"Here are your packs, humankind. We've released your steeds into the forest."
"What are you going to do with us?" Bathsheba called out. A sly grin crossed their visitor's face, and he turned to look at some unseen companion outside the tent.
"Well, I don't know, humankind. We could put you on a spit and roast you over the fire." "That is a possibility," the other's voice acknowledged. The Shay withdrew, and the sound of uproarious laughter retreated from the tent. "They mean to eat us!" cried Bathsheba in terror. "Don't worry, Bathsheba. They were joking about it," the doctor told her, but added to himself, "At least, I think they were." Their backs grew stiffer, and their legs colder and colder as they lay there. Minutes drifted into hours, and the sounds outside turned from merrymaking into sleep. Bathsheba, her body numb, sank into a restless sleep, while the doctor and Ace talked to each other. "Can you smell that, Ace?" the doctor asked, his sensitive nose twitching. "What?" "Yes, there's a sort of tang in the air, isn't there?" "Yes, it means that snow's coming." "You can smell the snow clouds?" "You're not making things up again, are you? I thought that was just a sort of superstition." "Well, occasionally when the conditions are right, you do get some foretaste. It isn't always completely reliable, but the way this world is going, I should say that snow is most definitely in the forecast.
What do you mean?
The sun has gone, leaving behind it a distant red giant which supplies only a meagre amount of light and heat. I imagine that the only thing that's staving off a collapse into permanent Arctic conditions is the massive heat reserve stored in the oceans. But gradually the temperature will fall. It's only a matter of time.
So, blue notice and colds all round?
Yes, quite. It's a depressing prospect, isn't it? No wonder everyone wants to desert the sinking ship.
But why did the sun disappear?
Who knows? The possible explanations all seem so unlikely that I wouldn't want to speculate. I think it is definitely important that we get to see this Goivni person. Bathsheba stirred in her sleep and murmured,
Goivni, help me, don't leave me behind.
The doctor continued, It'll be most intriguing to meet him, provided we can get close. A dangerous character by all accounts.
But they said that he used to be their friend. I wonder why he changed.
Another good question. You're full of good questions tonight, Ace. If only we had the answers.
But we're going to get them.
That's a very optimistic and admirable attitude, Ace. We'll have to escape from our present predicament first.
So, how are we going to do that?
I don't know, Ace. For the moment, we don't seem to be in any danger.
Apart from having our backside stuck to the ground.
Yes, there is that. The doctor wriggled uncomfortably to restore the circulation to his nether regions. He sent a brief message to the circulatory centres of his brain, indicating that some vasodilation was necessary. Then he restored his attention to Ace. It's only a matter of time. I'm sure that some route of escape will present itself. Ace awoke to animal screams of terror. She tried to get to her feet, but the ropes were still confining her.
Doctor, what's happening?
Something's attacking the camp. It's been staggering around for the last couple of minutes. Above the scream, Ace heard a low howling.
What is that?
I don't know. Bats, are you awake?
Yes.
Do you know what would make that sort of noise?
No. I've never been so far away from home before. I don't know a thing about the world. It's coming towards us, Ace shouted. Professor, it's coming this way.
I know, Ace, I know. Bathsheba strained her neck round, looking to the doctor for direction.
What should we do?
There's nothing we can do. Just hope for the best. The animal howling was right outside now. At such close quarters, it became more distinct and sounded almost as though it was some garbled language screamed by an alien tongue. Suddenly, the tree was knocked to one side. Their bonds jerked them along with it. The doctor was pushed into the decreased angle of the tree. Another blow rocked the tree, and then another, and another. Suddenly, the impact stopped, and the howling drew away from the tent. As it went, the tent flap pulled open briefly, and a shaft of white light spilled through. To Ace, the doctor's face was thrown into a sharp image of dark and light. Then the flap swung shut again, and they were plunged back into darkness. Bathsheba cried out,
The ropes have loosened.
But how? The doctor asked.
Never mind how, Professor, Ace shouted. Let's get loose and get out of here.
She shrugged off the ropes and helped her two companions free themselves.
Come on!
She snatched up her rucksack and slipped her arms through the straps.
You'll have to help me, pleaded Bathsheba. I won't be able to keep up with you.
It's all right, Bats. Put your left arm around my neck and I'll carry you, the doctor said. He gathered up her small frame in his arms. Ace pushed her head out of the tent and looked around.
All clear, she said,
and emerged fully. The doctor followed her out. The camp was in disarray. The central fire had escaped its confines and was beginning to catch on the closest canvas sheets. Tents had been knocked over, and shay bodies littered the ground, their forms ghastly in the flickering glow from the fire. Moonlight shone through the trees in the distance.
We've got to get out of here, Ace whispered to the doctor. I mean, it might come back.
Come back? Bathsheba asked. It's a possibility, the doctor agreed. We'd better make our way back to the road and get out of the forest as quickly as possible.
Which way is it?
Come on, this way. The doctor, carrying Bathsheba,
led Ace into the bramble and ferns which made up the ground layer of vegetation. Eventually, they came out on the track, though in the dim starlight that filtered through the foliage, this was only evidenced by the slight reduction in hampering plant life.
"If only we had our horses still,"
Ace said wistfully.
"But we haven't. We'll just have to walk. We haven't any choice."
Scan arboreal plantation at 6327-1580. Multiple signals identified. Cancel targeting. Awaiting instructions. Scan random program. Random instruction number 1. Scan. Validity instruction number 12. Awaiting instructions. Target arboreal plantation at 5215-1570. Ignite primary burner. Eruptate. Awaiting instructions. Observe consequence instruction number 12. By Ace's watch, it took them 6 hours to reach the far edge of the forest. She remained amazed at the doctor's stamina in being able to carry Bathsheba all the way. Admittedly, the girl could not be that heavy. At a rough estimate, she was only 13 years old, and she had little hair to increase her weight. But the doctor did not pause and, of course, did not complain. Once free of the forest, Bathsheba walked, and they put a further 2 miles between themselves and the forest, crossing fields of burnt stubble. When the doctor called them to a halt, they all sank to the ground gratefully. The doctor's eyes closed as soon as he was down, and Ace fished in her rucksack for a bottle of water and some of the beef jerky. Without opening his eyes, the doctor stuck out a hand and received some food. With his other hand he took the bottle, took a swig, and then returned it to Ace. She had never seen him like this before, actually tired, drained of energy, and hoped he would recover with a few hours of sleep. Ace lit a fire between them, and she and Bathsheba crouched by it, sucking the heat into their bodies. "What happened to you, Bathsheba?" Ace asked. A blank look crossed Bathsheba's face. "What do you mean?" "Your arm," Ace explained. "Oh, I was born this way, and then I had an accident that made it worse." "An accident?" "My brother was killed," was all that Bathsheba would say. "I'm sorry." "So am I. I miss him. And ever since he died, my life has been different. My father used to care for me, but he blamed me for David dying, I think. It wasn't my fault. People always find a scapegoat. When things go wrong with their lives, they try to blame someone else. I used to live in a place called Perivale. There were these people who couldn't get jobs, whose lives were totally screwed up because they were too dumb to do anything about it. And there were other people who were different, in looks anyway. And the dumb ones blamed the others. They said that they were stealing all the jobs. Because of that, they did awful things, bad things, sick things, just because they were different. That's like here." "What do you mean?" Ace asked. "They told me that Drufford was to blame for Dagda's wheel leaving the sky." "Drufford? One of the Formois who used to work on the farm. They said that was why he had to be burnt." Ace's throat constricted, and she barely choked out, "Burnt? Yes, it was horrible. My God, what sort of people are you?" But what had they done to Manisha when they had firebombed her flat? Were those Yobs any more civilized than the people of Tir Na Nog? Did the Earth people have any right to inhabit a moral high ground? "Let's talk about something else," Ace suggested. Once again, the doctor was first to awake the next morning. He woke his 2 companions and urged them to their feet. As they prepared to set off, a light snow started to fall. "This could be tricky," the doctor told them. "Without the sun to guide us, we may have to rely on my impeccable sense of direction." "So we'll end up wandering in circles," Ace said. "It could happen," the doctor grinned. "I suppose," said Ace, "that this might come in handy." She produced a heavy rubber-sealed torch from her rucksack. "Have you had this all the time?" the doctor asked. "Sorry. Stupid question." "I didn't want the batteries to run out, and we've had sunlight most of the time." Bathsheba was puzzled. "What is it?" Ace flicked the switch to the on position. Bathsheba gasped in surprise. "How does it work?" "Well, have you got a few days for me to explain some fundamental physics principles to you?" the doctor asked her. Bathsheba nodded vigorously. "Yes, I suppose you have, haven't you? Let's make a start, shall we?" They tramped across the plain of frost-encrusted grass. The doctor gave his jacket to Bathsheba when she began shivering in the cold, and Ace pulled on a pair of luminous thermal leggings. They stopped in unison when, in the distance, they heard a baying howl. "Wolves?" asked Ace. No, the doctor shook his head. "The resonant quality isn't right. That's larger than a wolf, or at least its lungs are. Keep moving." They pushed on, but the noise came again, and it was closer. "It's on our scent," the doctor said grimly. "A demon?" Bathsheba whimpered. "It's come for me again." "Maybe we should split up," Ace suggested. "It can only follow one of us." "But it would just catch us one at a time," the doctor disagreed. "And besides, I couldn't do that." His eyes scanned the dark anxiously. Bathsheba had fallen to the ground now, clutching her head in her hands. "He's come for me," she told the unyielding earth. "Fire!" Ace said. "Maybe, but there's nothing to burn." A shadow, almost one with the dark, passed by them to the north. "It's circling us." "Nitro 9!" Ace dropped her rucksack and pulled out one of her explosive cans of deodorant. One of her hands clamped lightly on the lid in readiness. She looked to the doctor. "All right, Ace. Just this once." He gave his permission. The beast moved towards them from out of the gloom. Quick as a flash, Ace whipped the top of the can off and flung it at the advancing creature. 5-second fuse! She cried, and flung herself to the ground. An orange and white flower blossomed briefly in the dark. The creature let out an ululating howl, thick with pain. In the light of the explosion, Ace had glimpsed its long, rangy limbs and its thick trunk. Its head sported 2 bulbous glaring eyes, and its mouth bristled with fangs that dripped saliva. "Jesus Christ!" She breathed a prayer. The creature was still standing. In an almost human motion, it shook itself as if to clear its head. Hatred shone in its eyes as it turned to face them. It had them now. They could not outrun it. Now, perhaps, they would never reach Goivni. Maybe this demon had been sent to prevent their approach. Ace wondered if it would toy with them, like a cat playing with a mouse. She inched close to the doctor, seeking reassurance. His skin was icy cold. With a wail of attack, the creature bore down on them. Stretching its gleaming talons ahead of it, it slashed at Ace's face. She fell backwards, crashing down onto her rucksack. The doctor reached forward to help her up, but now the beast was over them. It exhaled noxious fumes into her face, and its jaws opened wide to accept her flesh.